Welcome to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. I'm excited to show you this game. This game is probably one of the more instructive games of chess that I could show you because of the nature of the theme that I've chosen to discuss in some of my videos, the rooks, the importance of the rooks, and the value of bishops and passed pawns. This particular game, I missed some things, and I lost one of my powers in the process of an attack that I didn't expect to. And it kind of threw me for a loop a little bit, but in the process, because I had been using my favorable imbalances, because I had my rooks on open files very well, I was able to continue on with my game anyway. Now, a grandmaster would have saw that as a beautiful sacrifice. For me, I didn't see me losing that piece, so it was a blunder, but I was in such a good position anyway that I was able to win the game. And I want to show you the value of using Jeremy Silman's system of the imbalances. Now, I'm not getting paid by Mr. Silman to promote his books or his system of thinking and all. I love his stuff because it works. I finally found something in chess that works. And I'm excited. I love sharing it with you. My opponent here, I believe, is playing the queen gambit improperly. He brings out his queen immediately. Now, at this point, I'm saying to myself, that is just incorrect. That is not the way to play an opening. You don't need to bring your queen out so soon in the opening. He would be vastly better bringing out his other minor pieces first, and then he pushes the pawn, of course, because that is a preventative move. In my opinion, that's a waste of time at this point. I'm not even developed. I'm not going to go on an excursion yet. So I've brought out my knights, and my opponent pushes another pawn. Now, this pawn, in my opinion, this pawn thrust is more efficient, better than this one, because he's obviously going to challenge my center with this next pawn. And that is what he should do. I'm building a very strong center here. And in fact, I decide, since he's put his queen here instead of his knight, he doesn't cover this square. Had he put his knight here properly, he would cover this square, and realistically, I probably wouldn't have pushed that pawn. So at this stage in the game, the main imbalance that I see is my huge pawn center. I want to prove that's indestructible. I want to prove that's stronger than his defense. His plan is going to be to tear down that pawn center. He brings forth his bishop, pins my knight on the diagonal. I bring my queen up to b3 to challenge his bishop and protect my knight. His bishop's a completely unprotected piece. He brings his knight on the rim because of his pawn push to protect his bishop. He's not in a very good position here. He's not doing this opening correctly, in my opinion. I go ahead and push for more space on the queen side. I have great central space here. I'm going to push for more space, because with more space, I have the better ability to maneuver my pieces. This is a very important commodity to have in chess. And I am again bringing more power to the center to prove that my center is indestructible. My opponent castles. I go ahead and continue going forward. In the process of gaining more space, I'm also threatening his queen. At this point, because of the nature of his opening, by bringing his queen out so very early, the first major piece he brought out, he's lost his queen already. Can you see that? He can't move here. My bishop's got this diagonal because I'm developing my other powers. He can't put it here because my bishop has that square covered. He can't put her here because of my knight and bishop, and he can't bring her here because of my knight. He can't move his queen. His queen is lost. That's why it's so important to bring out your other pieces first. Don't charge with your queen in the front. She can be taken. She's very vulnerable in the beginnings of the game. Now, my opponent recognizes this, and he comes forward and takes a pawn with his knight, threatening my queen. So he's thinking, well, you're going to get my queen, I'm going to get your queen. Not happening. Not this game, man. No way. I take that knight with my pawn because of my very powerful pawn center. I have the capability of protecting my queen, and I do so. He really sees he's in trouble, so he exchanges down as many pieces as he can before he loses his queen. Or else he's thinking, maybe I can open this up so I can get another square to put my queen on. Whatever it is he's doing, he's trying his best to get out of this bad position he's put himself in. Well, I'm able to exchange the bishop for the knight. So he no longer has the two bishops. He has one bishop and he has one knight. I have both bishops and one knight. That's the imbalance, besides the fact that I have more space, I have more territory, and he's not going to have his queen very much longer. He recognizes this, so he gets the most bang for the buck. He brings his queen down here and takes the knight. And at this point, I'm thinking, you know, I'm in good here. So now he is down hugely with the exchange, and he doesn't have a lot of central structure. He's okay defensive-wise at this point. There's no real weaknesses in his pawns at all. But I have an open file here, and I have another open file here. My pawns are not going to obstruct my rooks if I can put my rooks on those open files. This is key to the game. When you see open files, you try like crazy to put your rooks on them. My opponent makes a good move here. He puts his knight on a central outpost. That's a very solid knight because my pawns cannot, they're not back here. They can't attack him. This one can, though. So that's not a permanent outpost. Before I chase the knight off, I want that open file to his king. This is power chess. Whenever you see an open file, you must take advantage of it. I cannot overemphasize that. Every grandmaster in their games that you play through, you'll see this happening. Of course, he has to move his king over. He loses a move to move his king, and I'm going to bring up the forces. I'm going to centralize even further and cramp him a little bit more, put a little bit more pressure on him. He wants to relieve the pressure, so he pushes his f-pawn. This is good strategy, because if he can get rid of that pawn, then he also has an open file. I haven't castled yet. I haven't had to at this point. Vukovic, in his book, The Art of Attacking Chess, a very good book, says there are times when you don't need to castle absolutely immediately. There's no threats here. So I can use this time to develop and increase my space. That's what I'm doing. And I continue doing so, pressing my pawn again to chase off his knight and increase my territory. And it works. I chase him back. Now I develop once again my next bishop. I have both bishops. Use them. Absolutely. Don't leave them home and worry about taking advantage with your queen and your rook. Bring your whole army into the game. That is one of the best ways to improve your chess. Instead of opening the file, he pressed his pawn and closed it. I believe this was a mistake in judgment. That was not the best move for him. So, I'm going to push the h-pawn forward. I'm going to gain more space in the center. I'm going to gain more space on the queen side. And I'm going to gain more space on the king side. I have become greedy. To be greedy is good. In chess, as Silman says. If I have a chance to gain more space, absolutely do it. You bet. He brings his king up again. Because of his insecure position, because of his lack of power, because he brought his queen out and lost her, his king is feeling a little antsy, so he has to waste time moving his king. He hasn't moved his bishop, which is worthless. You can see all these pawns on the white squares are keeping that bishop firmly in place. That, in turn, keeps his rook out of play. He's not playing with 4 powers. He's playing with 2 pieces. 3 if you count the king. And he seeks to strengthen his pawns. I drop my bishop to here. He brings his knight over to g6. Now his knight is putting a little bit of pressure on my... He sees a target here. So I go ahead and push the pawn to kick the knight off his perch, and in a way I kind of let him out. Now he's free to roam around here a little bit. It's not that big of a deal for me. I don't want him to get my bishop. I want to keep my bishops. He does come here to check, forks my bishop, and forks my rook. It's a great fork. I let him in by pushing the pawn stupidly, and he's got a beautiful fork on me. The only problem is my queen also controls this file, so I simply swoop over here and take his knight. It all comes to naught for him because he's not as well developed. He's not developed at all. Look at that board right now. He has a snake for pawns, and that's it. He has his rook, but it's not an open file. It's closed. That rook is useless. The bishop is useless. That rook is useless. My bishop has a diagonal putting pressure on his pawns. My bishop has another diagonal here, although it's blocked at this point. My queen has free access to this file along with my rook, and it's toward his king. I'm feeling pretty good about this right now. I believe I've used the Silman imbalances of extra space, central development, etc. really quite powerfully. Now he is feeling the effects. I believe at this point my opponent saw I have to do something to open up my bishop, man. So he's going to push for more centralized space. Rightfully so, in my opinion. I'm going to take advantage of this diagonal. I have a checkmate coming up right now. I have to take advantage of this. This is too good not to. And his defense is the rook, a good defense. That's about all he has, so I put more pressure on him still by bringing my queen to g6. Now he's feeling the crunch. Put him in check. He has to drop back. He's only got the 1 square. Now I bring my other rook to the b file. Now I've got another open file to function under and another one here. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. He finally gets around to taking that pawn, which I believe was an error because, I'm trying to sneeze. In the process of him taking that pawn, he opened up my file for me. That was an error. He was stronger leaving that file closed, not taking that pawn. Do you see that? If he would have let me take the pawn, then he could have retaken. He would have had an open file here. But as he played it, he gave me the open file. Yes. Don't do moves that help your opponent. That's another Jeremy Silman idea. I come up here. I have enough power. I have enough thrust that I'm going to sacrifice my bishop to get rid of these pawns. I'm now going to try to open him up so that I can get to his king. And I'm going to do it through a bishop sacrifice, get rid of those centralized pawns. And it works beautifully. He takes the bishop. I can afford to. I've got him on the ropes already, and I dodge down here with my queen to take the pawn. Now I have this open file here, which I control, and I have direct access to his king area. I'm sitting very nice here, I think. He brings his pawns forward. Now, it's at this point that I saw something that really got me excited. And this was the crux of the game. This is where I can give you some really good instruction on chess. When he pressed this pawn, I have this pawn here. This pawn is a passed pawn. 3 more moves and I'm in, man. Yeah. Well, when he pushed this pawn, I took him en passant, and now I have 2 beautiful passed pawns. That's a power move. But do you see what I missed? Now, I wish I'd been a grandmaster so that I could say, oh yes, I planned this out this way. Unfortunately, I'm just an amateur. I'm a beginner. I've been studying chess hard for about 2.5 months. I missed this move that my opponent plays. In a way, you can call it a blunder. A grandmaster would have said it was a sacrifice. I'm not a grandmaster, so I did not see this. He took my queen with his bishop. The point of him pushing his pawn was to open up that diagonal to get my queen. And I did not see that. I confess I didn't. However, I sat back and kind of went, oh no. And then I thought, but wait a minute now. I've been doing everything I can to make the imbalances in my favor work. And they have. They've worked beautifully at this point. I have wonderful central space. Yes? I have wonderful kingside space. I have a very beautiful open file here, and I have a very beautiful open file there. Every one of my pieces are active, and they have been in the game, and thus I have put myself in a much stronger position than my opponent. His rook has not yet begun to even move. Mine are already claiming the files. He can't just come and claim this file because he can't protect it there because I've got this spot here to his king. So, you know, this is my justification for my own psychology to say, way to go, shirts. I didn't look at all the pieces, okay? I was so excited to see that en passant move and march my passed pawns in that I did not look at every piece and I lost my queen. So that's a lesson for you. However, because I know how to use my rooks in open files, I'm okay. Thank goodness. I have developed to the point to where I still have good compensation, and now look what I can do. Now it gets fun again for me after a couple of minutes of sweat and bullets. I use my file to gain his 7th rank. Now I have 2 rooks coming at this pawn. I have a wonderful bishop here coming at this pawn once I press my passed pawns and start marching them in. And I'm in a good position to really make capital of my positive imbalances. I have more positive in this position than my opponent does. If I don't blow it, I think I can succeed here. He brings his bishop down to here. He's trying to gain space and get a fork on my rook. His pawn is in the way, so I'm covered at this point. I press my pawn. I have the imbalances in my favor, the central space. I have 2 passed pawns. Use them. This is where the energy is. Push it. Because he has no option. He has to do something to stop my passed pawns. That's the power. And to boot, they're both the D and the E centralized pawns. That's just pure bonus as far as I'm concerned. He recognizes this. He has to do something, so he pushes his pawn. And of course I take it. I don't want to leave that passed pawn there and bring my rook back down and over to be passive and block that pawn. No, just eliminate it. My rooks are absolutely perfectly poised. There's no reason to no, take the pawn. Get rid of the pawn. And now he's pushing pawns like crazy. He's realizing, man, I've got to hurry and get some counterplay going because he's going to push his pawns up and in. However, I have a problem. At this point, I can't promote those passed pawns. He owns his 8th rank with his rooks. And I've heard people say, well, I like my rooks. I don't like to exchange rooks. I understand that. If you don't need to, then keep your rooks. As long as you're using them on open files and ranks, yes. In this position, it would be smarter of me to get rid of all of the rooks. I have him from 2 directions, man. His king is way over here in the corner. If I got rid of all of the rooks, I have 2 very powerful passed pawns here that he cannot stop. Do you see the value of that? It's good to have your rooks and use your rooks. Sometimes it's even better to get rid of all of them, not just some of them, all of them. And that's what I do. I bring my rook over here and take the pawn. He has no choice. He has to take that rook. I go ahead and bring my rook up and take that rook. I'm covered by the bishop. So my next move is a discovered check. I can move that rook out of the way and his king's in check. So he has to do something very strong here, and he does. He challenges my rook. Now at this time, wouldn't it be better to move my rook over here and put him in check and take a pawn? No. Are you kidding me, man? Get rid of those rooks. Here's why. I'll show you. Take the rook. All right, the last rook is down. He has to exchange the rooks. And now what's my next move? I win the game. I push the pawn. Do you see that? He can't catch me. And now I've got my queen again. He resigned. That's a fun game. This is a fun game for a number of reasons. When you have an open field, when you have an open board, your bishops and your rooks really thrive. They do well because they want the long, powerful diagonals and the files and the ranks. My opponent didn't open correctly. He used his queen wrongly, and because of his lack of development, because he had to move his queen around all the time, and he had to keep his king moving to stay out of danger, I was able to acquire open files with my rooks, and that won the game for me. Even though I lost my queen, I still had enough favorable imbalances with my centralized space, 2 very dangerous passed pawns, one of which promoted, and the open files with my rooks and a bishop to support me, that I was still able to use those imbalances to win this game. So that's the value of knowing what to do with the chess pieces. Rooks belong on open files. Absolutely. The best place to put your rooks is on open files, and then if you can come up and get the 7th rank of your opponent, fantastic. That's where the rook acquires the zenith of its power. That is where it is master of the chessboard. I was able to use my rooks to exchange down his rooks to render him completely helpless from stopping me of going to get my queen. Isn't that fun? See, the Silman system of imbalances works, you know? I can't help it. It is so fun for me, after all these years, to find a complete chess system that really does work when I can use it, when I can put it into use in my chess games. Now, does this mean you're going to win every game of chess now that you know what to do with your rooks? Don't you believe it? No. None of us win every game because we become experts and masters and grandmasters of chess. Everybody wins and everybody loses. If you can swallow your pride and ego, and I'm saying this for me, if you can swallow your pride and ego and continue practicing, you can begin to see how to read the chessboard. You understand better, aha, that's an open file. I know I'm not going to put a knight on there or a bishop. I want my rook. If I see a diagonal here, I don't want to put a pawn on it. I want to use my bishop, etc. So I hope you enjoyed this game. I did. I enjoyed playing it. It was quite fun. I enjoy making these videos for you. That's a lot of fun for me. So, thanks for watching my videos. Happy checkmating, and I will see you in the next video.